these matters and to have a nationally determined test for significance rather than something that each council gets to work out through planning. We need practical tools and methods to ensure that these limits can be met, particularly when we have over-allocated resources like fresh water. We also need to adopt reasonable timeframes to meet them, because while 10 years might sound like a long time to the people who glue their hands to the road or insist every last frog is the one you have to save, actually there are many things we've done to our natural environment in New Zealand which are going to take decades or a lifetime or more to resolve. We need to have reasonable timeframes to realise these ambitions for our environment. That also includes offsetting, because while some offsetting happens under the RMA, and thanks to Josh for your presentation, we still see far too many burdensome consents with screeds of conditions where offsetting and other means could provide environmental gains, much greater impact at lower cost. And that means they may well be able to be offset elsewhere to get that impact. We need to empower the role of restoration work in delivering net benefits. Examples like the Roa coal mine and Oceana Gold Progress mine, which I had the pleasure of visiting in metre deep snow in July or August of 2020, they demonstrate how environmental benefits from extraction and development, they're not a zero-sum game. We can have our mines and we can have our environment too. We're going to adopt national standards, and in particular nationally standardised zones for urban areas to simplify the planning process. National standards, and particularly as they apply to mining and quarrying, extractive and land development activities, will codify common best practice, so people no longer need to ask permission for the things that we already know how to do well. And as more standards roll out, that will be a key task for the transition of the new system. This will provide a significant reduction in the number of consents asked for, needed, and reduce regional inconsistencies and delays in obtaining approvals. Along with standardisation and trusting people like you to deliver projects within environmental limits, we're going to have a greater focus on enforcement. We're going to have a national compliance regulator which will be established with a regional presence to drive consistency and certainty across the country and embed integrity and trust in the system, absolutely vital to get bipartisan support and to essentially address many of the legitimate concerns that those in the environmental NGOs and environmental movement have about any change to planning and environment rules. We're going to introduce reverse sensitivity protections in the new system, because existing lawful mining and quarrying activities should be protected from complaints by new neighbours who move into the district. We also need to recognise that existing operations need to have similar protections so they can develop further if the land they're on is zoned or owned for this activity. Now, these are just a handful of the changes that we're proposing to deliver. Spatial planning will play an important role in identifying and protecting infrastructure corridors, strategic assets, and resources that we want to identify for development early, rather than when somebody turns up with a resource consent application. We're going to move to a single plan per region and rationalise the very messy layers of regional policy statements, regional plans, and then district plans that have to address them. That's just far too much planning to contend with. We're going to introduce something that is dear to my heart and to ACT's heart. It's a relief regime for certain types of regulatory impositions that will provide an important counterforce against this over-regulation zealotry in councils. For too long, council planners have been able to get out the highlighter and colour in SNAs and outstanding natural features over people's properties with the best of intentions, but it's costless to them. The cost falls on the private property owner and to those who can't live in homes that can't be built on those properties. Together, all of these features will create a system that delivers on the evolutionary leap that we're proposing for our planning system. And it aims to restore the ability for some of us, if that's what we want, to get out the number 8 wire and deliver an innovative low-cost solution rather than one that has to always be 316 stainless. So I hope you're buoyed by the direction of the change, as buoyed as I am. We do recognise the mining industry plays a very important role in New Zealand's prosperity. It's vital to our goal of doubling mineral exports to $3 billion by 2035 to get this resource management change through and transition as quickly as possible. So I encourage all of you here today, businesses you work in, to stay engaged as we work through these reforms and to help us ensure that we deliver on our aspirations to get into more world-class resources, to unlock the wealth and prosperity that can be truly transformative for the New Zealand we love. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions. What, no hecklers?
Simon, thank you for that. My name is Kyle D'Souza. I'm an analyst at Euro's Hartleys. We're pushing very hard on getting institutional investors comfortable with New Zealand over the last possibly 6 years. And thanks to people like Damien Spring, who we've been backing in, and the team from Oceana Gold, who've just set the standard for how to run a mine. One of the big questions that I get, and to be clear, we had $200 billion in the room with Mr. Jones in October last year, so the money is there for New Zealand, is sure, these projects might get consented. There's a big pipeline of exploration projects. I've visited 6 since in the last 4 days that have been here, but there is a risk that these changes can be reversed. And what would you say to institutional investors who are putting their money into exploration projects that by the time the new government comes in, they don't have their consents to mine, but they've already deployed $100 million in each project in exploration before they get their money?
Now that's a very real concern, and it's important. Minister Bishop and I are engaging with the Green and Labour parties to identify all the things we have common ground on. Spatial planning is one. There'll be other aspects of environmental management that if we can make it clear how, say, the risks from intensifying farming and primary production activities can be managed back to where those risks are acceptable and over an acceptable time frame, there are ways that we can bring them on board. But what we can't change is the culture that drives the cultural Marxist approach to resource development and attitude to wealth that besets New Zealand's centre-left. When I visited Australia last year, we met with infrastructure agencies and those involved in public-private partnerships who said there is a bipartisan approach to infrastructure investment and procurement across Liberal, National and Labor governments in Australia. Unfortunately, our political left here do not have that maturity. But I tell you what might help them mature, spending quite a long time in the freezer. I doubt very much, in fact I would take bets now, I'm not sure, I think political betting's actually been outlawed in New Zealand, unfortunately. Well, that's a bit of red tape we can add to the list. But I would bet serious money they won't be back in the next electoral cycle, and we will have 3 solid years additional to bed in the resource management reforms, and that is why the transition and implementation of the system that Bishop and I are taking final decisions on that's been drafted right now that will be introduced later this year, pass through all stages by July 2026. Implementation must be achieved within full implementation, including plan changes, a new planning tribunal set up to test demands for ridiculous consent conditions. This needs to be embedded well before the 2029 election and demonstrated to the voting public that actually this is working, so it's no longer a contentious issue. Planning should not be a contentious issue. It only becomes a contentious issue when it's failed everybody, from first home buyers, those trying to get on the property ladder, as well as organisations like yours looking to invest in resource projects. So we can't fix stupid, but we can certainly keep them in the fridge for a while.
Good talk, Minister. It's good stuff, and you're on a good track. So I see that as a beginning, and only a beginning. There's a lot of work for you to do. There's a lot of work for us to do.